Hello and welcome back to Rage Gaming and more Arc Raiders. Today we're back to talk about grenades in the patch of 1.11. Since my original list, we've had some new additions like trailblazers become more of a mainstay, specifically in PvE. And obviously, we've had our first balance pass for the ever-present, overly strong trigger grenade. So I want to update the list to be more accurate to my true feelings these days. So let's begin with the first and probably most interesting thing that we were going to talk about, which is A tier for the trigger grenade. Yes, it's no longer S tier in my opinion. What makes a grenade S tier? Well, for its purpose, it needs to basically be the very best. And before that, the trigger grenade was definitely that. The trigger grenade would be the grenade of choice in all scenarios for PvP, and it would be a top tier or kind of the best choice overall for dealing damage to arc of many different kinds due to its sticky and large AoE explosive nature. So why is it an A from one patch? Here's the dev notes. The trigger grenade currently dominates PvP encounters and players favour picking it over all other grenades. The nerf aims to make it less usable as a trigger in the air nade while keeping its usefulness as a sticky bomb. So, the damage fall off has been rebalanced, now concentrating the damage closer to the center of the explosion and dealing less damage the further away from it you are. So as you roll out of it, the further you are from the center, the less damage you take. On top of that, what's had the biggest damning aspect of it for PvP is the delay when you throw it and when you can actually trigger it. It used to be 0.7 seconds, which is pretty much the moment it lands you can pop it. Now it's 1.5, so it's more than double the time it takes to pop it, giving players time to react. So in these examples, you can see that I've gone up to someone to just see if they could dodge it for me. And you can see that 1.5 seconds is an unbelievable amount of time. Putting it literally at their feet and popping it as fast as possible, a simple sprint roll, and they will take not just a bit of damage, but zero. So yeah, you can still use this the same by throwing at corners and forcing them off it. If there's any kind of delay in their reaction, obviously it's going to hit them. But there's like room for that now, which is great. For PvE, this still works fantastically. You'll just want to pinpoint the explosion to a weak point. But now it's harder because of the smaller radius. So examples of this would be like the legs of bastions or bombardiers, their back batteries, or ideally you attach it to their core. Now you can stun a bastion, for example, and move to the side and attack the core. With the trigger nade, you can absolutely slam those through that gap and attach to the core. And by doing that, you can kill them incredibly quick with these trigger grenades just as before. But with the random movement that happens, it can get in the way, meaning that smaller explosion doesn't actually reach the core if it's slightly off target. Meanwhile, it's still super easy with a target like a leaper and you attach it to the big eye, the core, or whatever. I would still use the trigger nades basically the same in PvE as I was before and still rate them very high in that context. But with the noticeably smaller AoE, you are punished for the mistakes or slight misplacements where before you weren't. So it's not the top tier choice that it was before, just a great one. For PvP, it's still the exact same purpose. You force people off corner holds or out of a room, and it deals nasty damage, especially the AoE near the center. This is how you use an impact, or say even a heavy fuse or snap blast in PvP. Now they can actually react to it, but of course if you stick it to them, well, they're not getting away from that, and so it has value there. There's an actual bit of skill, making it more of a reasonable option. So it's not busted and annoying and a constant threat that it was before, but it's still solid in its own right. And that's why it's an A tier now. Now here's another change for the list. I'm also putting in A tier the trailblazer. This is interesting because this is one of the best grenades you could possibly use against a ground arc when used correctly. It has the capacity to one-shot a leaper, as long as you spread that smoke and the cloud across the main body, across the core, popping all at once. Each individual explosion technically does 20 damage, but because there's so many explosions within that, it's a lot of damage obviously. This also works immensely good for bastions and bombardiers and is also a top tier choice. Take this example where I throw 3 of them at a bastion by getting up close. It's disabled, on fire, and I think it's like 1 or 2 hullcracker shots to the core and it's done. That was a really quick kill, basically made possible by the trailblazers. With bombardiers, you want to burst these down as fast as possible, and this is actually going to be my grenade of choice if I don't have access to a deadline to attach to it. So it's very good. Why is it not S tier? Well, because in PvP, it's nowhere near as good as reliable. The scenario where you throw the smoke and someone doesn't just roll to the side and completely avoid the damage it's unlikely. Most of the time, it requires the opponent to make a mistake to actually hit them with it, or a niche situation where it works. When it does, it feels great, but it's actually very inconsistent. So for PvE, it's fantastic for ground arc. For PvP, it's not that good. So near the top of A feels fair. Another change I'd like to make to the list is the shrapnel grenade, which I feel should be really better than it is, but ultimately it's not that strong. Dealing low damage, but worst of all, you throw it, and then it has the kind of fuse time of a heavy fuse grenade without the impact behind it. So in all the times I've tried to use it, it's been like contributing damage, but not the part that's really caused a real threat or decided the fight. It'd be better if I just shot them. So if I have them on hand, sure, but they're just not something I'm ever buying or crafting, and so I think they're a very underused grenade. Conversely, I think the snap blast grenade is just better in all scenarios. It's going to deal more damage, it's more reliable in AoE and more of a threat, it sticks to targets so you can attach it to arc for great damage, or the huge threat that provides in PvP. I love when someone's pushing me around a corner and I throw at the corner's like floor, they run into the nade and they can't react really, and now that decides the fight. So there's big potential there, but ultimately the same potential of throwing a trigger nade and popping it as fast as possible, but dealing less damage. But it is obviously cheaper to craft, but you got to keep in mind, if you throw trigger grenades at a bastion or a bombardier or something, let's say you have 6 trigger grenades, you'll need 12 or more snap blasts, so it takes longer. There's also this big heavy black cloud that happens with explosives. The snap blast is one of the worst for it, so it actually obscures your own vision, making it hard to punish a bastion you've just CC'd and run and shoot the back battery or the core or whatever, because the smoke's in the way. Now with those general changes addressed, let's blast through the rest. First up we have the light sticks, which basically generate a cool light that does basically nothing in the daytime and has a cool visual effect at night. That's the purpose. That's all I can say about them, whatever. Next we have the tagging grenades, also in C tier. They're worse than you might imagine due to the nature of how they work, and instead of popping like an impact, there's a long delay. If it actually hits something, it tags it, putting a little eye at the base of it. So at the arc, it's at the very base. For a player, it's basically in the middle of the feet. So even though you can briefly track their location, it doesn't last that long, and it's just not that reliable to even land. There are some contexts where dropping the sensor can cause people to freak out and give you an advantage. Most of the time, the tagging grenade just doesn't really do anything. With that, I've also got the gas grenade, which if you land on someone will drain their stamina pretty quick, and that can definitely be useful. But again, in the exact same scenario where you'd use this when you catch someone out, you'd be better off just shooting them, especially headshotting them, immediately with your gun. This works more in teamfight situations, but they don't have to leave just because they're low stamina. They can continue to hold the corner. And if you push into the smoke, you experience the same issue they're having and even put yourself at a disadvantage. So it's very awkward. Up in B tier then we have the heavy fuse grenade, which is dealing decent damage as it explodes, but with a long fuse time and it rolls around a bit. It can even be a bit awkward to land, even if you throw it under a bastion bombardier. If they move slightly, you miss the weak point. It's very unlikely you'll hit, say, a core with this thing, so you're not getting the full value of accurate explosions. But forcing people off corners with it, throwing it into a team and it actually dealing damage can be devastating. Since it's relatively comparable to craft to, say, a trigger nade though, I just can't put it in A tier, because a trigger grenade is still better in all the scenarios, PvE or PvP. Also in B tier, I have the seeker grenade. I really like these. Your ability to one-shot some weaker flyers or finish off a rocketeer that's maybe survived a wolfpack, because sometimes that happens, it can be really useful. Also, you can throw them at really long ranges compared to a wolfpack. They've got really strong active time and tracking. I wouldn't waste this on something like a wasp though, because you can literally one-shot a wasp with an impact grenade, which is so much cheaper and easier to run. But having it on hand when you are going to go hunt rocketeers, even if you're just shooting the rocketeers, it can really take a dangerous situation and deal great damage, or start the fight from super long range and be the difference. Having just a couple of them is nice. The blaze grenade remains in B tier. I find myself using it here and there, dealing great damage to leapers. Instead of killing them with one blaze grenade, maybe 2, you need like 3 or 4 if you place it bad. But just like chucking one at a bastion while I'm fighting it or a bombardier, it still deals great ticking damage and spreads the damage across different limbs, which is good against a bigger target. In PvP, it's still going to force people out of rooms or corners, dealing nasty damage, or deciding a fight if the context forces them to run into you. Down in B tier then as well is still the lure grenade. I still really like these things, their ability to stick to walls and targets. You just need to be a bit careful with them. Arc will instantly destroy them the moment they see them and target them if they can just shoot it with range damage. So you do need to throw it like behind cover or around a wall to get real value out of it, otherwise it ends as quick as you threw it. But just having a bastion bombardier turn around, or distracting them as you run up with a deadline mine, a single lure grenade gets a lot of value for very cheap costs, so I still really like them. Much like the impact grenades, which remain like cost effective, one of the best grenades in the game. You're not dealing a lot of damage, you've not got a huge AoE, but you are stripping armor super effectively. You can target bastion legs while you're behind cover and around corners. You can accurately throw these into any target, such as a core. You can one-shot a flying wasp with them. And if players are trying to corner hold you, a single impact grenade can shatter their shield, cause them to freak out, get them off the hold and let you actually push now. If someone has gone behind a corner to heal up as they look at you, you can break their heal and shield and seal the deal with a single impact grenade. If I'm ever planning on taking on Arc or doing any PvP, I'll bring 5 of these at a minimum, and they're so cost effective, it's easy to do. With that, of course, we have the smoke grenades, the little smoke and the big smoke. Obviously, the big smoke has more value for a longer lasting, wider range smoke, which can cover you in those key situations. Breaking line of sight with Arc is honestly really good with these, but obviously in PvP, it has so much utility and purpose. Bringing 1 or 2 of these with you every raid is a really good idea, because if you're extracting, you cover yourself in smoke and get to extract. You cover areas when you've been caught out. You close distances. If you've got a close range weapon like a shotgun, you throw smoke at them and rush them. There's so many great ways to use this. And with the little smokes, I just bring like 3 or 4 and get the same value. And they're so cheap to craft or work with, it's awesome. Lastly, we have S tier, which is still the same obvious bunch. We have the deadline mine for basically the one-shot machine that is against bastions, rocketeers, bombardiers, even leapers if you can get on them. Using that in combination with a photoelectric cloak to sneak up on them, or just 1 single lure grenade to distract them so you can place it and the job is done. All the fun of snap hooking to the top of a bombardier or bastion and blowing it up, and the immense value of this when dealing with matriarchs and queens. They're just an incredibly effective and efficient item, and I'm glad that they're in the game, since they're really not relevant in PvP, but amazing in PvE. Much like, of course, your wolfpacks, which are the primo flying killing grenade. So rocketeers can be one-shot by this, or put incredibly low. And they're the best tool for that, and cost effective to actually craft and run if you're hunting rocketeers specifically. They don't have much value against your queens and matriarchs, because you need to accurately hit the core, and it just doesn't accurately do that. But, you know, as the anti-flyer option, it's the best of the best. Lastly, we have showstoppers, which remain incredible in both PvE and PvP. For PvP, you're able to hard stun someone and free kill them, forcing them to a standing position, forcing them out of cover, working in AoE as well. It absolutely decides a fight, and it really does feel like a cheese tool that's incredibly easy to craft and run over and over. I actually rate it above the trigger nade for PvP purposes now. For PvE, you can bring everything out of the sky in terms of flyers, mount a rocketeer with it, disable a gun of a bastion bombardier, allowing you to free kill them, CC them and target the back battery. It's an unbelievably strong tool that maybe should be a bit harder to craft, but I don't think should be nerfed in its use. But it's definitely one of the strongest tools in the game. So yeah, S tier. So there you have it. That's my updated grenade list for 1.11. I really hope we see further balance. I want to see the tagging grenade and the shrapnel grenade get better in general. But I think things are pretty solid right now. I really enjoy using the utility of the game. And I hope they introduce more unique and interesting options, because I think they've got a lot of potential here. Let me know what you think though. And until next time, I've been Hollow, you've been you. Thanks for watching.
Josh, Cotton, and Hollow with the videos, dropping the humor like a hammer on your tippy toes, bringing entertainment on a daily arrangement to take our insanity and turn it into entertainment. Yes, I said entertainment twice, to reiterate that it is nice to look into your faces on a mostly daily basis when you let us in your homes to make the whole world a stage. Goodbye.